Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us with the Bright Safe session today. I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds for people to be able to join in. But if you are hopping in, my name is Michelle. I am a lead specialist here with the Bright team, and we've got a session today to be going a little bit in further detail with the SWMS component, the safe work method statements. So we'll give it a little bit of time, a couple of minutes to see if anybody is going to hop in. And you should be able to see my Bright Safe screen anyway at the moment. So we'll go through how to create a SWMS on the platform. I'll talk into sort of the different permission levels as well, and just give you a bit of an overall on that SWMS area, because it is something that we don't really go into too much detail during an onboard, just I guess relevant to the industry and the specifics of your business. We can talk into a little bit more and showcase it a little bit more today. So for those just hopping in, my name is Michelle and I am part of the Bright team here. I'm a lead Bright specialist. We're going to be going through the SWMS section on Bright Safe today, the safe work method statements. I will preface this all by saying I am not a technical, don't have the technical background, the advice component when it comes to filling in SWMS. So those questions, whilst you will see there's a question section, you're more than happy for you to pop them in there. But if it is something that's a little bit outside of the realm of what I can answer, I will let you know that it will probably be something to contact the advice team on. My sort of, expertise is in using the system. So I'm going to show you how you can use the system today to create your SWMS. I'm going to talk through who sees what at what access level, so you know what you're giving your team members so that they can hop in and be using it, or if they're just required to read the SWMS, and sort of talk you through those components. So we're going to jump into it. You should be able to see my screen here. I am on the Bright Safe system already logged in. What I will say is that we're not going to go into too much depth with it today, but even if it is purely that you're wanting your team to use SWMS or Bright Safe in general, I will explain that you're going to need to add them on through the Bright HR side. So your access on Bright HR, your adding of employees on Bright HR, that will carry into the Bright Safe section. So if there is somebody in particular you're wanting to get up and running using SWMS first and foremost, you will still add them on through the Bright HR system first. They will carry into here. And I'll talk through the different permission levels in a moment, but I do want to jump straight into the actual SWMS section. So on our left-hand panel here, you're going to be able to find SWMS under the risk management tab. So I'm going to click into there. Now it falls into here because our risk management tab is really our proactive steps. So you'll see things like risk assessment, SWMS, our hazard reporting. These are the things that we're putting in place. A, because a lot of our sites and things that we're working on will require them, but B, it's because we're mapping out sort of steps or what we're doing to make things safer before we conduct work, during conducting of work. So that's our proactive section there with the risk management tab. You can see our SWMS section here, so I'm going to click into it, our safe work method statements. Navigator is where it pulls us across to. Now, I've kept this a clean account so I can show you from scratch what it might look like from your end if you haven't yet hopped in. You're going to see a few things. So we'll start here on our SWMS tab. This is where you're going to have sort of, your overview of the SWMS that you have accepted or that are pending, as you can see here. So it's going to be a bit of an overview of what we're about to step into. I'll come back here at the end to show you sort of what it all looks like. We do have a little bit of information listed below. We've got an e-learning course, so you will see e-learning on the left-hand side here, as well as the reference to it here. So there is an e-learning course on understanding what the safe work method statements are used for, how to create them. So maybe a bit more knowledge building for those that might be a bit new to building SWMS. There is an e-learning course there. And then a little bit of an introduction as to, again, why, a few dot points as to why and in a general sense of using SWMS, and then some indicators on what we're going to be doing now with the actual setting up of the SWMS and how the platform works, which I'm going to talk into detail as we're going through. So the first thing I wanted to show us is this button here, add a new SWMS. When we click into that button, it's basically just giving us a blank template. Basically like a fill in the forms, fill in the blanks in the little rectangles there, and this will compile the SWMS for you. So if you've got existing SWMS that you're wanting to digitize, you might follow these steps and fill in the blanks and fill it in. So you've got a digital copy. You can still print them out if you need a hard copy of them. You're still going to be able to print it out, but it's going to kind of filter all into that SWMS section we were just looking at. That's one way of doing it. It is a lot of, I guess, legwork in the fact that you're going to be going in and you're detailing everything on your own end. But what I'm going to actually do now is I'm going to click the cancel button, because what I want to refer us to is the library, because within the library we've actually done up already 36 different templates that you can be using for your own advantage in your own business. So you can see a few here listed. We've got Australia and New Zealand, so they cover obviously the relevant legislative requirements and steps that you should be taking. I'm going to focus on the Australian ones for today. So you can see here the title of the SWMS. So there's quite a range. A lot of us, you'll know that the SWMS is more for that high risk sort of work. A lot of times it's that construction trades element. So a lot of, I guess, trades, electricians, plumbers, construction happening, as well as others as well that will require this. So there's quite a mixture of templates that we can be using. For today's, I guess, run through, I'm going to use something like maybe working at heights, working on roofs, because I find it's quite general. It will apply to quite a lot of different businesses that will use SWMS. It's quite a common starting point. So I'm going to use this one for today. What we're going to do, we click into the template and it's basically already pre-populated. So you can see a lot of the information here. If we're clicking on these pink arrows, it's opening up what the detail of the compliance element, the people element is. But really, I think it's the activity side of things that people like about the SWMS section here, because the activities is mapping out those steps that you're required to do even before. You can see here with the planning, before, during, after the actual element of working at heights. So you can see here all the different steps. I'll do a quick scroll through and you'll see there's quite a number of different steps. Now, we might need to make changes to this. We might be working on a site where we don't have scaffolds involved, or we're only using ladders, or vice versa. We might need to make tweaks to this. We might not need all these steps because the site we're working on is a little bit different. What we have the ability to do is use this copy button. So what the copy button is going to do, and hopefully it'll all sink in now as you see it, copy button is going to push all that information into that blank template we saw just before. So instead of you having to go in and fill in all the details step by step from scratch, you can use those templates to, basically do that legwork for you and be a bit of a starting point. So you're just going in and making tweaks where and as needed. So I'm going to go through the steps today. Again, I'll preface that I'm not sort of a technical, I've never had to create a SWMS, luckily, because it's probably not a good thing for me to actually have to create one for an actual activity where you need a SWMS. So I don't know the technical aspects of filling things in, but I will be able to show you the prompts that need to be filled in and how you can be doing them. So we're going to go through a few steps here. We've got our title. Now, notice that these are all editable. So if you want a reference number to be the job number that this is for, you can go in and you can update that, job 123 as an example. We've got the date that we're inputting and we're putting a description in here. So I've dealt with a few solar panel businesses recently. So let's say we're installing solar panels on a roof or something like that. We could list that in here. We've then got a few details to input, the organisation name that this job is being completed for. You've got the country, which if you've copied one from the library, it will pre-fill from the country that you've chosen it for. We've got, again, our site, so we can put in a job number or the actual address. and we've got the plant element here. So you'll notice that the required fields are the ones with the little red asterisks. So let's just put in here our organization name, and we're going to say in here it's Bright Sydney, and then we're going to save and continue. Our next step is going to take us through to the people. So it's saying who's preparing the statement. It will pre-fill with whoever's account is logged in. But then we have the ability to add in a few more details. Job title, again, optional. People at risk, who's going to be in and around the area, and they're potentially then at risk. So we could be listing them. Maybe it is members of the public because we're in a public space. We're going to be cordoning sections off, but there's still potential that they'll be walking past. So maybe we're going to add them to that list. Who's going to be the project or works manager on that site? We'll input that. I'm just going to put in my initials here and put in a few details so we can continue on to the next page. The third page here is the work activity. So what high risk element are we doing that we're needing this SWMS for? Now, because we've copied it from the template, it's already pre-checked the one regarding heights for us. But you can see here that there's a whole heap of options in here that you can check, and you can check more than one as well if you're needing to. I'm going to uncheck those and just leave it with that top one there. And as we scroll down, I will say that it's going to give you a little prompt here. So again, this is maybe a good reference point to come back to the advice team if you're having questions, if you don't see I guess the certain activity that you're wanting to create your SWMS for. If you don't see that listed in here, we would recommend that you would call the advice team, because it may be something that they would recommend, maybe looking at a safe operating procedure instead of the safe work method statement, or maybe they'd ask more detail as to what the actual core activity is happening, so we can funnel it into something more specific rather than something a bit more broad. So that's there, and that will always give you that prompt at the bottom. So do contact the advice team if you start to get technical questions at this stage, because you find you're not seeing what you're needing your SWMS for in that list. We'll save and continue. And then we are asked about the equipment and the info section here. So this is just saying what PPE are we needing on site for this method statement that we're creating. So we're going to have safety boots and harnesses, and vests and hard hats. We can add that in, but we can also add in our own. Again, when I was doing a run through with a couple of solar panel companies, there was a little previously, they mentioned that there were certain tools that they use to install or whatnot, or they need a certain PPE when doing that. So we would add that in through here. So I can just add in, I'll just do test, for example, so you can see what it looks like. Add another, and it just adds it onto the list like that. So nice and easy, but it's there to sort of, again, at the end, we're basically doing a little setup wizard that will compile this all at the end. One thing that I am going to mention whilst we're here is you might notice along the right-hand side here, we've got a document section. So if you're needing to add additional documents, paperwork, pictures, whatever it may be, to sort of log it all into the same safe work method statement, you do have the ability to be adding additional documents or attachments as you're going through as well. We're going to save and continue from here, and we're going to get to the main section here being our activities. So this is what we saw when we copied from the library, and I was showing you all the different steps that you'll have in terms of the activities that we've mapped out. We said that we had planning, we went through and we had, how many did we have? In 26 different steps. So again, this is the main sort of section that a lot of people like our templates for, is that we've gone through and mapped out in the planning is going to be our first step. Before we've even arrived on site, we're going to make sure that we're training our personnel on what they need to be doing ahead of that site sort of induction. So this here, these are all free text boxes, as you can see. You can go in and type in. But what I will say is that they're already pre-filled with information. So you've already listed what hazards are potential, what the risks of, not doing this step could be. But this is really one of the key areas, the controls required and the systems of work. So what are you going to put in place to action this planning step? So this is here to give you ideas of things that you can be doing, but B, it's also kind of like a little checklist, like a cross-reference. If you're unsure if you're doing enough or if you think that you might have missed something, use these controls to be that reference point for you. Make it a checklist. You know, are we making sure that we have a full rescue plan and that the team are across it? Are we having toolbox talks throughout the time of conducting that job? You know, is the correct PPE being used? Use this as that checklist for yourselves when you're, you know, in the stage of planning, for example. But then we could go to step 2 and we can see we've got pre-start checks. Again, we're listing the hazard, we're listing the risks, and then we have our controls in here. So it's the same thing, that's your same sort of, I guess, function that you're doing, is you're using the control measures here, or the controls required, as that reference point. You can add things in here, you can remove things in here if it's not applicable to the site you're working on. That's the benefit of using the template, is you're not having to start from scratch. You can if you want to, but you're not having to. You have the elements here and then you can tweak them relevant to that site you're working on. I'll do a quick click in and out of the different sort of activities here. And as I was saying earlier, when we were looking at it from the template point of view, I pointed out that there were elements of working at heights from ladders, as well as in, you know, one of the steps further down, if I can click across, then there's scaffolding elements. So for example, let's say we're only using scaffolding on the site that we're going to. There's no ladders in use. We actually don't need step 5. At the bottom, there is the option to delete this step. So again, this is where I'm talking about having the ability to tweak and change the template without having to do it all from scratch yourself. Now, it says here, are we sure we want to delete? Know that it's only deleting it in this instance that we're creating this SWMS. It's not deleting it from the library of templates that you have. So if you then have to create another SWMS for a site where you are using ladders, it will still be there. It's not removing it permanently from all templates in the library. But yes, you could go through and essentially you could go in and remove any of the irrelevant steps, make your tweaks, again, deleting ladders, the elements and whatnot. You're also able to swap, or as you can see here, drag and drop to reorder the steps. So if you feel that step 5 needs to be swapped with step 6 or vice versa, we can actually do that a lot easier and it can shift across like that. So it's here to be, I guess, manageable from your end. You can match it up to the sites you're working on, but again, it's a lot of that information is already in there. All right, so you can see all that. I'm not going to go through all of these different steps because there are quite a few. It's more to show you and talk through the functionality of it. Again, if you're having questions as to what steps you need to include in your specific SWMS you're creating for your specific activity, or what controls should be included as a requirement, that's going to come back to the advice team. Unfortunately, the Bright team here, we don't have that I guess, advice knowledge, that backing to help fill in the blanks. The team that created this are the team that are from the advice component. So there's already information in there, but if you're adding something in and you wanted to discuss, hey, what would the controls required be for this instance, contact the advice team. They're there to have those conversations with you, and then you can be populating that in here. We're going to save and continue for now. We're going to jump across to the next step, which is the compliance side of things. So who's going to be the responsible person for this SWMS? Again, I'm just going to put in my initials for now. We've got the date that the SWMS are going to be received by that responsible person. Is there going to be a principal contractor for the work? Yes or no? If we're clicking yes, it's going to ask us to fill in details. I'll leave it as no for now, just so we're not having to type in test and things like that. But again, these next little paragraphs are the area that a lot of people like the templates for. What measures are going to be in place to make sure we're compliant with the SWMS? what are we going to do to make sure that the swims are being reviewed, or those control measures are being reviewed. So again, text box where you can go in and you can make tweaks, but it's giving you the ideas of things that we should be doing to help manage and help make, I guess, continue the compliance with these. So pre-start meetings, toolbox talks, inductions, reviewing the swims, making sure that we're discussing with the teams and supervisors if any updates need to be made. That's the prompts in here. Save and continue. And we have our review section at the end. So the review section is we can put in who's going to review this document in the long run. So, and when do we want them to be reviewing it? So again, something probably more technical to be speaking with the advice team on. But if you do plug in a date here, know that you can start it earlier than the actual date being listed. So I'm just going to do it for a week's time. We're going to pretend that we're on this job for a couple of weeks. So we're going to do it in a week's time, and then we're going to save and complete. Saving and completing that is going to finalize it into this sort of format where you've got like a bit of a breakdown of everything we've inputted. You'd have your activities that you've inputted, you have your review and when you've dated that you're going to do that review. And then we have our acceptances. So the acceptances is where we can actually send it out to the team on the Bright Safe app to say, hey, you're required to read the swims. So you'll see that there's nobody there at the moment. If I jump in and I attach a couple of people to be reading this, for example, and save, what you'll notice is that we have here 3 pending. You'll notice that on the right-hand side, I have the option to accept the swims. Now, the accept option will only show up once somebody has clicked into the activity side and actually reviewed that. Okay, so I can actually click accept. Perfect, I'll jump out there and back into here and you can see it's refreshed and I'm now in the accepted section. The pending section, we still have the employees who haven't yet read it. That's one thing I want to mention is sending these acceptances out to the team. Everybody can be accepting swims, all access levels. Your employee, your user and your admin levels are able to accept these swims. The important part to keep note of is who you want to be creating swims. If you want somebody to be creating a swims, they need to be either that admin or user level. So where you would update that is just over here on the left in the employees tab. You'll see the different role levels. So anyone who is an admin, they will see and do everything on the system, be able to change other people's access. They can do swims. They can complete swims, they can review swims, they can delete swims if need be. Your user level is also able to go in and complete swims and read swims that you've done up onto the system. However, the employee level, and we can change access by clicking on the person's name and you'll see the employee level there. The employee level can only accept swims. So they can only read and accept the swims that you have sent to them to accept. So keep that in mind depending on what sort of, I guess, involvement your team is going to have with the system and swims. I will mention that changing the access here has no effect on the Bright HR side. So the Bright HR side, more sensitive info, contracts, pay rates, leave them limited there. The Bright Safe side, you can give them higher access. You could almost look at the user level as the minimum level, particularly if you also want them doing things like risk assessments or reporting incidents. They're going to need to be that user level, so keep that in mind. I'm going to head back to the swim section just to sort of finalize a few elements here. So we were on the swims tab earlier, so we have our accepted swims in here. You can see that detailed in there. The library is where we went to earlier to copy a risk assessment to be able to tweak it, but now we have our swims management tab. Our swims management tab is where we can exactly that, manage the swims that we're working on, whether they are active or archived. So any that are in a draft stage, so if we didn't actually finalize that one we're working on, if we left it here, it would be in the draft. But we also have our active for any that we finalized and we basically we put a review date on it, that's finalizing it there. Now we can click into it and it will bring us back to the page we were on before. So if we need to send this out to more employees to accept, perfect, we can do that through here. If we need to start that review, or when we need to start that review, whether it's on this date or before, we can go ahead and click Start Review. I will mention, you'll see here the versions element. So as you start to do reviews, you're going to build up different versions of things. So if you do go in and review the SWMS and make edits to it, you're going to need to resend acceptances, because it's essentially nulling those first initial acceptances, because that was for version 1. You now have version 2, so you need to send this out to the team again to accept on those terms that you've inputted. Okay, we're going to head back to the SWMS management tab up here, because what I wanted to show you next was in these 3 dots, we're going to have the option to archive. So if we're finished this job, we no longer need this SWMS to be active, we can archive it. So it maintains the record on the system, but there's nothing ongoing that we need to be reviewing about it because the job is done. We can print this SWMS as well. So again, if we want a hard copy of the SWMS, we can use the print option. I'm going to pull it up just so you can see how it sort of compiles it all together. So you'll see like the breakdown of information in there. Might be a little bit small. It's going to check the work activities. You're going to have the different activities that we listed in here. And as I scroll down, I'll just show you, I think we'll see the PPE requirements coming up shortly. Perfect, so the PPE requirements, and this is really what I was wanting to show you, the employees' acceptances. So anyone who has accepted it digitally, you'll see the timestamp there, but you also have a few free text boxes or even next to it if you do want to print this off and have hard sort of not hard copies, physical signatures from the employees. You can also have that on the system there. So it gives you the option to have it digital, gives you the option to print it out and have a hard copy. I will mention you can't email out from the system. So if you do need to send this to you know, your principal contractor or whatever it may be, and they're external to the system, you will be using this option to print, maybe save it as a PDF and then email it across to them external to the system. The other option that I wanted to show you was the copy option. So the copy option is going to be handy if you are either tweaking one of our templates from the library to make it sort of consistent with what the majority of your work looks like, or if you're creating your own SWMS from scratch, tailoring it to more of what you guys do, and instead of having to start from scratch every single time, we can use that copy button to mimic a new template with those exact details that we fixed up in this in this SWMS, for example. So if I hit copy, you are going to see a little notification to remind you that, hey, you are going to need to make this specific to the activities and the site you are now going to be doing this for. So it does give you a little prompt, but we can hit copy and it will give us the page where, again, all the details are the same as to what we just inputted previously. The organization name will be removed and the site location will be removed, because that's obviously a section that will likely differ, but the activities will carry across. So the ladder element that I deleted won't be in there. The swap that I made will be there. And then we can continue this draft and it will be exactly what we've done. So you can see it's already put in that sentence I did before, but we can just go in and fill in the blanks where things have changed. So that also comes in handy. Instead of having, again, to start from scratch each time, you can use that copy function, whether it's on a drafted SWMS or whether it's on an active SWMS. You can use that. You'll see the copy option here. The other thing I'm just going to highlight is the delete option. So if a SWMS is in a draft stage, you can delete the SWMS. If the SWMS is in an active section, you will only be able to archive in terms of removing it from this list. Okay, so that will just move it across to your archive list. I don't think we have anything in there at the moment. It's not ongoing, so there's not going to be continual renewals happening for that one, or reviews, I should say. Perfect. But that's, I guess, the main elements of using the SWMS section here on Bright Safe. If you have more technical questions, again, the advice team is where you're going to want to go. If you have questions on who sees what or who needs what access to do these, again, quick overviews, your admins and users can be creating SWMS. Your employee level can only accept the SWMS. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that the access levels on BrightSafe have no impact on BrightHR, so they work independently, so you can give your team they can all generally be a user level here on BrightSafe. But hope that's given us all a bit of an idea of how to use the SWMS section, how to take advantage of that library, as well as potentially building your own. And you can mix and match as well. You could have 2 tabs open, or if you've got 2 screens like me, you can have one with a library open, one with a blank slate, and you kind of copying and pasting the info that's relevant to the job or the activity you're doing and tweaking it to what you've got currently. But it is going to be a bit of a digital library, give you sort of, I guess, an extra spot to have things stored so that it's, not having to be just at the computer on the desktop. Because keep in mind, a lot of the notifications and things will go to the BrightSafe app. So when you're sending these acceptances out, if your team have that BrightSafe app, they're able to go in and review the SWMS through there and accept through there. In terms of creating the SWMS, it is more on the desktop view that you're going to need to be doing that. You can technically do it from a phone or a tablet if you're wanting to, but not through the actual BrightSafe on the Go app. You'll need to access it through the browser version. So through the BrightSafe app, there is an option to switch to the BrightSafe desktop version, or just do like a Google search of BrightSafe, the way that you would Google anything else on your phone. That's the way that you would be able to create SWMS on a device that's not necessarily a computer or laptop. But hopefully that's given us or given you guys a bit of an intro to it if you've not yet sort of dived into it. But again, along the way, if you are having any other questions, feel free to reach out to the Bright team or the advice team if it's more of a technical query. If you're unsure, call in. You can always give the Bright team a call. If it's something that we can assist with, we will. If it's something that's more technical, we will put you through to the relevant team as well. But appreciate you all joining in and letting me guide you through a bit of a section that we don't really go too far into depth with. Often during the onboards, we maybe touch on it, but hopefully that's given you a bit more insight, and appreciate you all joining this afternoon, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.